They were a people without a name in the written records of the Old World, an empire carved into the memory of stone, sand, and ocean wind. Their cities were swallowed by shifting deserts, their harbors buried beneath coastlines reshaped by centuries of storms. For generations, they were dismissed as myth, whispered only in fragments by coastal storytellers and hinted at in ancient maps that scholars once called mistakes. But today, after new archaeological findings, ocean drift analyses, botanical studies, and a controversial set of transatlantic clues, a growing number of scientists believe this forgotten African civilization may have crossed the ocean long before Columbus, leaving traces in the earliest cultures of the Americas. Their story has remained silent for 1,000 years, until now. The tale of this lost civilization begins on the western rim of Africa, where the Sahara meets the Atlantic in a great crescent of dunes and rock. In antiquity, this region was not the wasteland we know today. It was a world of green plains, navigable rivers, and clustered settlements bound by trade and ritual. Archaeologists from Oxford, Dakar, and Rabat have spent decades reconstructing a landscape long erased, revealing evidence of a vast cultural network stretching from the Niger River to the coast of Mauritania. Ancient rock art shows tall ships with triangular sails, carved centuries before similar vessels appeared in Mediterranean records. DNA sampling of ancient remains reveals surprising genetic links with cultures far across the sea. But the heart of the mystery lies in a single coastal city, Koumbi-Salé, a metropolis known to medieval Arabic chroniclers but never precisely located. Classical scholars once assumed it lay inland, closer to the trans-Saharan caravan routes. But recent excavations near modern-day Cap Timiris challenge that assumption. Beneath layers of sand and collapsed stone walls, researchers uncovered fragments of a port city, copper tools of unfamiliar alloy, pottery traced to inland workshops, and most intriguingly, residues of plants native to the Americas, bottle gourd, cotton varieties, and traces of ancient maize pollen, the last of which should not exist in pre-Columbian Africa. This discovery ignited debate. Conservative historians urged caution, pointing to contamination possibilities. But oceanographers from the University of Lisbon joined the discussion, noting that prevailing currents in the 10th and 11th centuries made the West African coastline a natural launch point for transatlantic drift. The Canary Current, powerful and steady, could carry a capable vessel directly to the coasts of Brazil or the Caribbean. Combined with seasonal monsoon winds, the journey, once thought impossible, became merely improbable. Still, improbability is not impossibility. Records from early Arab geographers describe a confederation of kingdoms along the western Sahel, governed not by a single emperor, but by a council of merchant kings. They controlled gold mines in Bambouk and Bouré, salt caravans from the Sahara, and an export trade that reached as far as the Abbasid Caliphate. Their wealth was immense, their ambition greater still. But what set them apart was not gold or salt, it was the sea. Evidence from underwater surveys near Arguin Island reveals ship anchors of a type used nowhere else in Africa. These heavy, multi-pronged structures, dated between the 9th and 11th centuries, suggest vessels large enough to survive open ocean conditions. Traces of tar, pitch, and ship repair tools show that these mariners were not coastal drifters, but trained navigators with knowledge of long-distance sailing. Archaeologists Dr. Aisha Diallo argue that these seafarers were pioneers of a forgotten maritime tradition, a civilization blending the desert's caravan networks with the ocean's winds. They proposed that they developed dual economies, one built on overland trade, the other on seafaring voyages no chronicler ever recorded. Their society was a tapestry of ethnic groups: Soninke farmers, Imraguen fishers, Berber merchants, and migrating Fulani clans. Their cities, built from limestone and laterite, rose with mosaics of blue tile imported from Morocco and bronze plaques depicting ships adorned with sun discs and horned helmets. Local myths speak of the people of the western horizon, travelers whose spirits lived between desert and sea. In these stories, we find hints of their ambitions, hints of why they might have sailed beyond the known world. To understand how this civilization may have reached the Americas, scientists turn to environmental data. Between the 9th and 11th centuries, the Atlantic experienced a series of anomalous climate phases: stronger trade winds, warmer sea surface temperatures, and increased hurricane activity. Paradoxically, these conditions made it easier for crossing from Africa to the Americas, especially for sailors familiar with reading cloud movement, swell patterns, and migratory birds. Botanical evidence adds another layer. Several species of sweet potato and bottle gourd appear in African contexts centuries earlier than Europeans recorded transatlantic contact. Some botanists argue for natural drift, but drift cannot explain the matching cultivation techniques found in both West Africa and pre-Columbian South America. Methods involving ridged fields and moisture-conserving bunds. The most controversial element comes from cultural parallels. Among the Mande griots, traditional keepers of history, there exists an epic known as the Voyage of the Seven Currents. It describes a fleet sent westward to the land where the water ends, commanded by a ruler who sought knowledge rather than conquest. For centuries, historians dismissed this as allegory. But then there is the American side of the story. In the river valleys of the Amazon basin, archaeological teams uncovered geometric earthworks, circles, squares, and ceremonial mounds whose construction techniques echo Sahelian patterns. Radiocarbon analysis places some of these structures between the 9th and 11th centuries, precisely when West African maritime activity peaked. While most scholars attribute this to parallel development, a minority believes some designs may reflect cultural exchange, however brief. More compelling is the presence of African-type metallurgical techniques in early Brazil sites, charcoal-rich smelting pits, and folded iron forging practices previously unknown in the Americas. These are not definitive proof, but they are difficult to ignore. If a crossing occurred, who were these navigators? Historical linguistics offers a clue.
The Soninke people, founders of the Ghana Empire, held deep reverence for ocean spirits despite living far inland. Their myths describe ancestors who came from the great water with the rising sun at their back. Meanwhile, the Imraguen coastal people possessed specialized fishing knowledge centered on ocean currents and whale migrations. A joint research team from Dakar and Sao Paulo compared burial artifacts from coastal West Africa and Brazil's Marajo Island. They found striking similarities in copper jewelry, hammered with spiral motifs symbolizing waves and cycles of time. The Marajawara culture, once thought isolated, now appears more cosmopolitan and technologically sophisticated than previously understood.
Anthropologists Maria Fernandez argue these parallels hint at momentary intersections, not mass migration, but encounters between small groups of African explorers and indigenous American communities. Their cultural footprints would have been subtle, easily lost in the immense sweep of history. Only now, with new scientific tools, can we detect them. If such a civilization existed, why did it vanish? Around the 12th century, catastrophic droughts struck the Sahel. The once green plains collapsed into dust. Rivers dried, trade routes fractured. The merchant kings who governed the coastal confederation fought over dwindling resources. Some retreated inland, others attempted to maintain maritime routes that no longer held economic meaning. The final blow came from political shifts inland. The Almoravids, expanding from Morocco, destabilized regional alliances. Their campaigns disrupted coastal ports and redirected trade northward. With their economic lifeline severed, the maritime cities declined rapidly, from bustling harbors to desolate ruins swallowed by advancing dooms. Stories of the Western voyagers faded. Their memories survived only in fragments, ceremonial songs, carved symbols, ship motifs etched in forgotten tombs. Their civilization died not in a single catastrophe, but through the slow erosion of climate, conflict, and time. The 21st century brought new light to old mysteries. Satellite imagery detected geometric patterns beneath Mauritania's sands. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the foundations of massive structures, granaries, watchtowers, and ship warehouses. Excavations revealed harbor installations far larger than expected, indicating fleets of substantial size. Meanwhile, in the Americas, genomic sequencing detected faint traces of African haplogroups in pre-Columbian remains from Brazil's Atlantic coast, traces too ancient to result from the transatlantic slave trade. These findings remain controversial, but they have intensified research into early ocean crossings. In 2023, a multidisciplinary team published a landmark study correlating African sail technology with pre-Columbian ocean drift models. Their simulations showed that under favorable conditions, a skilled African crew could reach the Americas in 30 to 45 days, faster than many medieval Mediterranean voyages. Although consensus has not been reached, the evidence is mounting. African maritime was far more advanced, connected, and exploratory than classical narratives suggest. The possibility that Africans reached the Americas before Europeans carries profound symbolic weight. It challenges centuries of assumptions about African passivity in world history. It shifts our understanding of global contact, innovation, and exploration, and it restores agency to cultures long dismissed as footnotes. But the value of this discovery lies not in proving who was first, but in understanding the shared complexity of human civilizations. Whether or not every detail is confirmed, the emerging picture is clear. Africa's role in shaping early global history has been underestimated. The lost civilization of the Western Sahel, whether large or small, left echoes that reached across oceans. Their ambition, curiosity, and resilience speak to a universal truth. Humanity has always been a species of travelers, driven by wonder, necessity, and the desire to connect with worlds beyond the horizon. The evidence presented here draws from leading scientific institutions. Oxford University's West African Archaeology Project, the University Sheikh Anta Diop of Dakar, Brazil's Museum of the Amazon, peer-reviewed studies in quaternary science reviews, Nature, Ecology and Evolution, and the Journal of African Archaeology. Ocean drift modeling published by the Portuguese Institute of Marine Science. Less academically reliable but culturally significant sources include oral traditions from Monde Griots and early Portuguese explorers' diaries, documents shaped as much by memory as by myth. Together, they form a mosaic, fragmented, incomplete, but unmistakably compelling. The story is only beginning. New excavations along the African coast, new DNA sequencing in the Amazon, and new oceanographic models may soon answer questions that have lingered for centuries. If you want to follow every breakthrough on this forgotten chapter of global history, subscribe, join our community, and help uncover the truth behind the world's most enduring mysteries. The past is not silent. It is waiting to be heard.